Assalamu alaikum. معكم Lulwa ALBader. On today's class's tutorial, we'll be discussing how you can prepare your laser cut files and how you can prepare to print them on any types of materials such as paper types like Canson, wood types such as MDF, and plexiglass. So I'm going to be talking about what kind of laser cut models that you can do. So first off, you can make the normal architectural elements type model, the ones that you've always been doing manually. You cut up the columns, you cut up the facades, and you just place them. Instead of you cutting those elements yourself, by laser cutting, you can have that pre-cut for you, and you can just stick them together. The second type are helpful for site models, whether if they're flat, if you just have roadways, stacks of buildings, or if you have a topographical type model, where you need to stack the topography with the same type of material. So what you'd need to do in these situations is, like, you have a 3D model, let's say, you section it off, contour the topography, contour the buildings depending on their height, and basically set them up together for like your large site model. Next things up is sectioning out your 3D model. Basically, if you have something more 3D-esque, you can section it out in a proportional distance, and then you link it together by a string type, for example. Another way of doing sectioning type models is you'd have the 3D cut up parts together instead of spaced out. You put them together to create a 3D model, and you'd have parts that are cross-sectioned that link them together, so you'd notch it together. The materials that you can use to laser cut, the most common one is Canson. It comes in really thin, there isn't much variety. It's the regular Canson that you usually use to model. You can use plexiglass. It's a little bit thicker, but it does come a bit شوية thinner, شوية thicker than this, depending on the workshop. There's the stencil type material that تشوفونها حق stenciling. You can also use that to laser cut. Wood types such as MDF. So usually they come in really thick. If it's too thick, it's going to be hard to cut, but do check with your workshop if they can. One thing to note about most of these materials, like for example Canson and wood, you can etch the material. Basically, you can score. So اللي داخل, it's not cut through. بس the laser goes faster than regular to cut and just leaves a mark inside. Plexiglass and ceramics. Some types of plexi can be etched, but glass and ceramics can't be cut at all. It'll end up breaking the material. So just stick to that for wood and Canson. So you basically finished all your drawings on AutoCAD or on Rhino. The first thing you need to do, if you have it on Rhino, you need to export it to AutoCAD after you're done cleaning up your files. Just make sure that your end file is an AutoCAD file. So for example, in this file here, I have two basic facades. Let's say I have this long facade. It has a hatch on it, it has some openings for windows, it has an outline. I need to start setting it up to be laser cut. So let's say it's all in like one layer, maybe you've separated them depending on elements, but now you need to start separating them depending on if they're going to be cut first or second, or if it needs to be etched. Because how the laser cut machine works, it's kind of like a grill. If you cut the small things inside a bigger piece later, it's not going to cut right because the piece is already fallen down. So make sure you're cutting the openings of your big pieces first and then cut out the whole thing. So now that I have it on red, the machine is going to cut these first and then cut the outline, and then you have that piece safe and sound. One thing you need to note is that you need to have all your lines joined. So let's say this isn't joined, let's explode it. This can be cut, but it's going to be a really hefty process for the machine. And also maybe you have some lines overlapping, so it's best to click on like some joined lines one by one and just join them together. Let's say you already have a joined set of lines, but I'm pretty sure you might be having some duplicates on top of it. Maybe you drew a line twice, 3 times. So let's just go to this layer. Okay, so مثلا I have like an extra line here, maybe 2 extra lines up here. There's a really handy tool called Overkill. Now what does Overkill do? You can select all your drawings or a specific area. You type out Overkill. Let's just click on this. Type out Overkill. I usually don't mess up with these settings. I do make sure to keep optimized segments within polylines on. Make sure you do this after you join the lines that you need, because sometimes it's not going to work if everything is disconnected. So I click on OK. So 3 overlapping objects and segments detected. Before that, what we had, let me just move this piece. we had these lines still existing. After I've done the overkill, it's basically gone. So it'll clean up your model very well. It won't let the laser like overburn the materials that you have, and the files can be cleaner. I've already explained color coding briefly, but sometimes it's good to check with your workshop what colors they prefer. Usually they already have a set code of, okay, red is for cutting, blue is for etching, but some places are different. So I'm going to show you another file. This particular laser cut place preferred yellow to have that for etching and black for cutting. So always check back with your workshop. You could either just give them a color without changing the layer, because the machine is going to focus on the color, not the difference in layer. So do make sure that you change the colors. Secondly, I've explained this in brief, but the outline of the material. So whether if you're using wood, Canson, they all have different sizes that's available in, for example, Desman or Shwekh. You need to check with those sizes. You need to yisunhum and then place them exactly as the size as it is on AutoCAD. And obviously all of the laser cut that you're cutting, make sure they're on the right scale and stuff like that. And you're going to need to start placing them on these boards, because what they're going to do is they're going to ياخذون على قياس البورد, يحطون all of what you're cutting on that outline. Boom, that's it.
So one thing with blocks and hatches, you're going to need to explode them so that they can be etched. So let's say I wanted this to be etched. I already have it exploded, but let's say beforehand it was just a hatch. So what you can do after you're like setting it up, let's just copy this and paste it over here. I can just, after I transfer it to the scoring layer, I can just click on it and explode it. You can do that with all of the polylines that you have on the scoring, but if you have it connected, like make sure that you have your blocks and etches exploded, but the polylines that you have for the things that you need to cut, make sure they're joined. So after you're done separating the layers, you can work on that. So when you start laying out the things that you need to cut, and let's say you're working on a site model, you can utilize the whole board. For example, for this, we used the full length of the MDF for our underlay, and then we started laying out on the same size the buildings that we need to stack. This is the AutoCAD file for the image that I've shown you. The yellow portion is etched and the black portion is cut. So how we cut these parts here, we sectioned it off depending on each like island. So let's say we have this island here, all of the buildings here, there's an etched underlay, so like we know where to stack them and what orientation. And then so the cut for this island is sectioned off here, so you can see the stacks. What you can also do is that you can etch the information that you want. So for example, in this model here, I've explained it before, there is a code inside. It works very well for site models, so that they'd know, okay, so this piece goes to that, this piece goes to that. It makes it much easier in the model assembly. The more work you put in on preparing your laser cut file, the easier your model making process will be. All right, so now you've got all your pieces, you're gonna start laying them out. So I've already prepared these. I've made sure to join the outside lines. I've made sure to explode my hatches for etching. Now I need to start placing them on my board. So for example, this board is an outline for an MDF board that I've previously used. So I'm gonna start laying them out. Now, one thing to note, depending on material, there will be burn marks. So Canson leaves burn marks on the underside. So if I have this piece of Canson, this is the top side of the cut, and this is the underside. You can see these burn marks. As for wood, on the top side, rather than the underside. You need to keep that in mind if you want to cut your pieces and you want to have the cleaner side on one facade. Unless if you have etching on that side, then you can't really do much. But for example, I have these pieces here now. This side, I have an etching, so I can't really afford to like mirror it and show it to the other side. But this facade has no etching. I could just mirror it. Okay, yes. So I have that mirror. When you print it out on, especially on wood, it'll be clean on the side that you need. So you can do that with things that don't have etching on the top side for wood. All right, so remember when I said about material thicknesses? They'll come into play if you're using wood. Wood is usually thicker. Canson is really thin, so you don't need to worry about that too much, but you do need to take care of those thicknesses. So especially with MDF, you can see here there's a thickness that comes with the MDF. So this group has already taken into consideration that thickness. So they made sure to increase the size of either side depending on the thickness, and then they reduced the size of these facades for this. And one more thing, when you lay out your information, so originally when we laid these two boards out, we thought we needed 3 boards, but we tried really hard to put them together so that it doesn't use too many boards. So don't be afraid to rotate, to mess with the orientation, and just do it for the sake of fitting things in. Always prioritize using less boards so that you can spend less money. All right, so now we're beginning to export. So you need to save the file as is, either as DWG or DXF, depending on the workshop. You can always give them a call, tell them you have the file ready, what kind of file do you need it as. Most of the time, they're gonna ask you to save it as an old AutoCAD file. So if you go to save as, and then files, like file type, you're gonna see all these older versions of AutoCAD. You can click on what you need. There's also the DXF files. So depending on the workshop, give them a call, leave them a message. They'll tell you exactly what's the minimum that they need. And then you can choose accordingly and have that saved and send it over. So now you have all your files sent, you've printed your things, and now you want to start modeling. Most of the time, if you're using especially Canson and wood, what most workshops are going to do, they're going to put masking tape on the backside so that all the pieces stay together. That helps you know which pieces are where, but you need to practice care when taking out that masking tape. Like for example, Canson, because it's a paper type, it might يمكن يشلع شوية من الماتيريال. You won't really lose much material with the wood. In fact, sometimes masking tape is really good with removing burn marks. So you can use the residual masking tape to remove any of the burn marks that you have on your laser cut. So for the glues, it's not much different from what you're using to normally model because you're literally using the same materials. It just depends on the material and what type of glue you use. I'm pretty sure that's explained, but I'm going to give you my recommendations, what worked with me. So the first all-around glue that you can use is the Yuhu Holzheim. It's like a white bottle, has like a black top. It comes in a small size and also a bigger size. تلقونه I think لوازم العائلة. It works for Canson, wood, almost anything, maybe except plexiglass, but it works like a charm. It's like a normal glue. You put it on, you do need to wait, but if it sticks, that's it. The second type, if you're using wood in specific, the Elmer's glue that you know, the wood glue, it works perfectly fine. You don't need to really use anything else. And I've used it myself. It works great. It works on the burnt edges. It's fine. Those were for the safe glues. Now we're going into not so safe glues. I'm pretty sure you've heard of Fix. So there's this brand called AK Fix. It's the one that comes in a set. You have the set that has the transparent glue that you added on. You could use it alone and just like do the waiting game, but it comes with a spray bottle that pretty much like hardens it within like a second or two after you use it. But it's one of those glues that are pretty dangerous. So when we had to use it, we needed to use a mask, and we also need to be in a ventilated area. It works well with everything, but with wood, some types of plexi, even Canson, it's a little overkill on Canson. It's kind of like using a glue gun for paper. It's a bit too much, but it still works. For plexi, since it's transparent, you need to use something that's also transparent. Fix is transparent. You can't rely too much on like how much you put Fix on it. So there's another material that you can use. That glue isn't really glue or safe either. It's called chloroform. I haven't personally used it. I've seen people use it, and the precautions that they need to take are hefty. So you need to make sure you have a gas mask, you need to make sure you have gloves. A lot of them have used like those medical syringes that have the needles. You take out the liquid through the syringe and then you apply it very lightly. You don't need to overuse it on the plexi edge that you need. I don't recommend you use it, but if you really want to and you have plexi, it's probably the cleanest glue that you could find for plexi to like for your end product. And that's it. All right, so that concludes today's laser cutting workshop. If you have any questions, direct them to Cass's DM. I'll be happy to answer them. And good luck with your laser cut models.